the stars had always called to humanity. For as long as people could remember, they had looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. When they finally built ships that could travel beyond their moon, beyond Mars, beyond the edge of their solar system, they discovered the answer. They were not alone. The galaxy was full of life, full of civilizations that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. And none of them wanted anything to do with Earth. Admiral Kevin Price stood at the window of humanity's largest space station, watching an alien ship pull away. The vessel was beautiful in a way that human ships could never match. It was smooth and silver, shaped like a teardrop, and it moved through space without any visible engines. The aliens called themselves the Veluxi, and they were one of 7 species that ruled the Galactic Council. They had come to deliver the same message that Earth had received every decade for the past 300 years. "Application denied," Kevin said quietly. He did not turn around when he heard footsteps behind him. Secretary of Defense Linda Morrison walked up to stand beside him. She was a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes. In her hands, she held a tablet displaying the official rejection letter. They didn't even pretend to consider it this time. The council voted against us in less than an hour. Kevin finally turned away from the window. What was their reason? The same as always. Humans are too aggressive, too violent, too unpredictable. Linda set the tablet down on a nearby table. They say we cannot be trusted with access to galactic technology. They say giving us hyperdrive capability would be like giving a child a loaded weapon. We've been asking politely for 3 centuries, Kevin said. We've sent our best diplomats, our greatest scientists, our most peaceful representatives. We've done everything they asked. We signed their treaties. We followed their rules. We stayed inside our own solar system like good little prisoners, and they still see us as animals. Linda walked to the window and looked out at the stars. The Veluxi ambassador told me something before he left. He said the council has been watching us since we first split the atom. They've been afraid of us ever since. Kevin laughed, but there was no humor in it. Afraid of us? They have ships that can cross the galaxy in days. They have weapons that can crack planets in half. What could they possibly fear from us? Our potential, Linda said. He told me that in all their years of exploring the galaxy, they have never found a species that advances as fast as we do. 1,000 years ago, we were fighting with swords. 500 years ago, we were still riding horses. And now we're knocking on their door, asking to join them among the stars. That terrifies them. Far below the space station, on the red surface of Mars, General Patricia Cole sat in an underground bunker that did not officially exist. She was 72 years old, with white hair cut short and a face full of wrinkles earned from decades of service. On the screens around her, she watched footage of the Veluxi ship leaving Earth's orbit. Another rejection, said Captain Danny Webb, her aide. He was young, barely 30, but he had proven himself smart and loyal. That makes 30 in a row. Patricia nodded slowly. Did you expect anything different? No, ma'am. But I had hoped. Patricia stood up and walked to a different screen. This one showed something the Galactic Council did not know about. Deep beneath the Martian surface, in caverns that stretched for miles, human workers were building ships. Not the clumsy, primitive vessels that humanity showed to the rest of the galaxy. These were warships, designed with technology that had been secretly developed over generations. Hope is a luxury we cannot afford, Patricia said. The Council will never accept us. They will never see us as equals. And one day, they will decide that keeping us contained is not enough. One day, they will come to destroy us. Danny looked at the screen showing the hidden shipyards. Thousands of workers moved like ants, welding armor plates, installing weapon systems, preparing for a war that might never come. Do you really believe that, General? I believe in being prepared." Patricia pulled up another display, this one showing similar facilities hidden throughout the solar system. Secret bases on the moons of Jupiter. Weapons platforms disguised as mining stations in the asteroid belt. Research laboratories buried deep beneath Earth's oceans. For 300 years, we have smiled at the Council and begged for scraps from their table. And for 300 years, we have been building. On Earth, in a small apartment in what used to be called Chicago, a young engineer named Katie Morgan was finishing her shift at a factory that made communication equipment. At least, that was what her official records said. In truth, Katie spent her days designing weapons that could tear through alien shields like paper through water. She walked home through streets filled with people who had no idea what was coming. They lived their lives, went to their jobs, raised their families, all while believing that the galaxy had simply chosen to ignore them. They did not know about the hidden armies, the secret fleets, the plans that had been passed down from generation to generation. Katie's grandfather had worked on the first prototypes of humanity's new weapons. Her mother had helped design the engines that would one day carry human ships across the stars. And now Katie was continuing their work, adding her own small piece to a puzzle that had been building for centuries. She stopped at a small park and looked up at the sky. The sun was setting, and the first stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere out there, the Veluxi were returning to their homeworld, satisfied that they had put humanity in its place once again. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was celebrating another successful rejection. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Back on the space station, Admiral Kevin Price received a coded message from General Cole. It contained only 3 words: "Continue as planned." He deleted the message and returned to the window. The Veluxi ship was gone now, vanished into the darkness between stars. Kevin allowed himself a small smile. "They think we're primitives," he said to himself. "They think we're children playing with toys we don't understand. Let them keep thinking that. Let them believe they have nothing to fear from the little species trapped in its tiny solar system." He turned away from the window and walked toward the door. There was work to be done. There was always work to be done. Humanity had waited 300 years for a chance to prove itself. They could wait a little longer, but not much longer. The stars were calling, and soon humanity would answer. The message came without warning on a cold Tuesday morning. It burst through every communication channel on Earth, every satellite, every radio frequency, every screen on every device. There was no escaping it. The Galactic Council wanted humanity to hear every word. Secretary General Marcus Boyd was eating breakfast with his wife when his tablet began to glow with an emergency alert. He picked it up and read the words that would change human history forever. By unanimous decree of the Galactic Council, the species known as humans are hereby declared enemies of galactic peace. All member species are authorized to use lethal force against human vessels and installations. Earth and its colonies have 30 standard cycles to surrender unconditionally. Failure to comply will result in complete extinction. Marcus read the message 3 times before he truly understood what it meant. 300 years of rejection had finally led to this. The Council was not content to simply ignore humanity anymore. They wanted to destroy them. Within hours, world leaders from every nation gathered in an emergency session. The meeting took place in a secure bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, a facility built specifically for moments like this. Holographic projections filled the room as presidents, prime ministers, and generals joined from locations around the globe. "They're claiming we attacked one of their mining vessels," said Admiral Kevin Price, his image flickering slightly as he spoke from the orbital station. "A Veluxi ship near Pluto. They say we destroyed it without warning. Killed everyone on board." "That's a lie," said General Patricia Cole. She sat at the head of the table, her face calm despite the gravity of the situation. We haven't fired a single shot at any alien vessel in 3 centuries. This is an excuse, nothing more. Marcus Boyd nodded slowly. The Council has wanted us gone since they first discovered us. They've been looking for a reason to justify our destruction. Now they've manufactured one. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the truth. It did not matter that humanity was innocent. It did not matter that they had followed every rule, signed every treaty, done everything the Council demanded. The aliens had decided that humans were too dangerous to live, and they had created a story to make their genocide look like justice. Linda Morrison spoke next, her voice steady. We have 30 days before they arrive. 30 days to either surrender or prepare for war. Surrender is not an option, Patricia said firmly. If we lay down our weapons, they will kill us anyway. The Council doesn't want our obedience. They want our extinction. Far above Earth, Commander Sophie Adams received the news on the bridge of her carrier, the Defiance. The ship was officially classified as a deep space research vessel, but everyone who served on it knew the truth. The Defiance was a warship, one of the most powerful ever built by human hands. Sophie gathered her crew of 4,000 in the main hangar. They stood in perfect rows, men and women who had trained for years for a battle they hoped would never come. Now that battle was 30 days away. You've all heard the message, Sophie said, her voice echoing through the massive space. The Galactic Council has declared war on humanity. They believe we are primitives, easy targets, a nuisance to be wiped out and forgotten. She paused, looking at the faces of her crew. Some were scared. Some were angry. But none of them looked ready to surrender. They don't know what we've built in the shadows. They don't know about our ships, our weapons, our plans. They think they're coming to slaughter helpless animals. Sophie smiled, and there was something fierce in her eyes. They have no idea what they're walking into. Across the solar system, humanity's hidden military began to wake up. Ships that had been dormant for decades powered up their engines. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment revealed their true nature. Soldiers who had spent their lives training in secret facilities finally learned that their skills would be needed. On Mars, Lieutenant Katie Morgan stood in the control center of one of the hidden shipyards. Around her, workers rushed to complete the final preparations on a fleet of warships that would soon face the greatest test in human history. How many ships do we have ready? Asked Commander Nate Carson, the man who would lead humanity's fleet into battle. Katie checked her displays. 600 warships fully armed and operational. Another 200 that can be ready within 2 weeks. Nate nodded slowly. Intelligence says the Council is sending 10,000 ships. Maybe more. Then we'll have to make every shot count. On Earth, ordinary people went about their lives, unaware of the preparations happening all around them. The governments of the world had decided not to cause panic. There would be time enough for that later. For now, they needed to focus on getting ready. In her apartment in Chicago, Katie's mother sat watching the news. The reporters were talking about the Council's message, speculating about what it meant for humanity's future. Most of them assumed it was the end. They had no idea. Captain Danny Webb stood beside General Cole as she reviewed the final battle plans. Maps of the solar system filled the screens around them, showing the positions of every hidden base, every secret weapon, every trap that humanity had been preparing for generations. They'll come through the outer system first, Patricia said, pointing to a spot near Neptune. That's where the hyperspace lanes are closest to Earth. They'll drop out of faster-than-light traveled air, regroup, and then advance toward our planet. And we'll be waiting for them, Danny said. Patricia turned to face her aide. This is what we've been preparing for, Danny. Everything my parents built, everything their parents built before them. 300 years of work, all leading to this moment. Do you think we can win? The old general was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but certain. "I think we have a chance. A real chance. And that's more than the Council is expecting us to have." She turned back to the screens, her eyes moving across the battle plans that would determine humanity's fate. 30 days until the enemy arrived. 30 days until the galaxy learned what humans were truly capable of. Outside the bunker, the sun was setting over Mars. The red planet's thin atmosphere turned the sky a deep purple, and the stars began to appear one by one. Somewhere out there, an invasion fleet was gathering. Somewhere out there, 10,000 ships were preparing to erase humanity from existence. They were coming to kill a species they believed to be helpless. They were coming, expecting an easy victory, a simple execution of a troublesome pest. They were coming, and humanity was ready. The invasion fleet arrived 3 days early. 10,000 ships dropped out of hyperspace near Neptune, their silver hulls glittering against the black emptiness of space. They were beautiful in the way that predators are beautiful, sleek and deadly, and designed for one purpose only. Admiral Zixter stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his fleet assemble. He was Veluxy, tall and thin with skin that shimmered like oil on water. For 200 years, he had dreamed of this moment. The humans had been a thorn in the Council's side for too long. Today, that thorn would finally be removed. "All ships report ready," said his second-in-command. "We can begin the advance toward Earth at your command." Zixter smiled, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Send a final surrender demand. Let them know what's coming. Let them spend their last hours in fear." The message was broadcast across every human frequency. "People of Earth, this is Admiral Zixter of the Galactic Council Peacekeeping Fleet. Your extinction is at hand. Surrender now, and we will grant you quick deaths. Resist, and your suffering will be legendary." On the human side, Commander Nate Carson listened to the message aboard the battleship Liberty. Around him, his crew worked in focused silence, preparing weapons and running final system checks. Nobody seemed afraid. They had trained too long for this. "Should we respond, sir?" asked his communications officer. Nate shook his head. "Let them wonder. Let them think we're paralyzed with fear." The Liberty was hidden behind Earth's moon, along with 599 other human warships. They had been there for 2 weeks, running silent, invisible to alien sensors. The enemy had no idea they existed. Katie Morgan sat at her station, monitoring the network of mines she had spent 3 years deploying. Millions of them were scattered throughout the inner solar system, hidden among asteroids, disguised as space debris, waiting patiently for their moment to shine. "Enemy fleet is advancing," she reported. "They'll reach the outer minefield in 6 hours." The Council fleet moved toward Earth like a great silver wave. Their ships flew in perfect formation, confident and orderly. Their commanders chatted with each other over open channels, joking about how quickly the battle would end. Some were already discussing what medals they would receive for their service. Admiral Zixter watched Earth grow larger on his view screen. The blue and green planet looked so fragile, so vulnerable. He could almost feel sorry for the creatures who lived there. Almost. "Any response to our surrender demand?" he asked. "Nothing, Admiral." Complete silence. Zixter frowned. He had expected begging, pleading, desperate negotiations. The silence was unexpected. They must be in shock. Understandable. Continue the advance. The fleet passed Jupiter, then Mars. As they entered Earth's orbital zone, Zixter prepared to give the order for bombardment. Once the planet's surface was burned clean, the Council could finally rest easy knowing the human threat was eliminated forever. That's when the first mine detonated. It happened so fast that Zixter barely understood what he was seeing. One moment, his tactical display showed 10,000 green dots representing his fleet. The next moment, 800 of those dots turned red and vanished. What was that? He screamed. What's happening? More explosions erupted across the fleet. Ships that had been flying in perfect formation were suddenly torn apart by weapons they couldn't see. The mines Katie had deployed were unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. They didn't just explode. They sent out focused beams of energy that could cut through alien shields like they weren't even there. "We're losing ships," shouted Zixter's second-in-command. "Admiral, we've lost 2,000 vessels in the last 90 seconds. Impossible." Zixter stared at his display in disbelief. Where are these attacks coming from? Before anyone could answer, the human fleet emerged from behind the moon. Commander Nate Carson allowed himself a small smile as the Liberty's engines roared to life. Around him, 600 warships moved into attack formation. They were nothing like the smooth, elegant Council vessels. Human ships were angular and brutal, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons that glowed with barely contained power. "All ships, this is Commander Carson. You know your targets. You know your orders." He paused, looking at the thousands of enemy vessels still reeling from the mine attack. "Make them remember this day forever." The Liberty's main guns fired first. The shot crossed the distance between the fleets in less than a second, striking a Veluxy cruiser and blowing it in half. Then every human ship opened fire at once. The battle became chaos. Council ships tried to return fire, but their weapons seemed almost useless against human armor. Shots that should have destroyed human vessels barely scratched their hulls. Meanwhile, human weapons tore through alien shields with terrifying ease. Commander Sophie Adams led her squadron directly into the heart of the enemy formation. Her carrier, the Defiance, was surrounded by smaller ships that fought like wolves among sheep. She watched her crew work with perfect coordination, years of training turning them into a single deadly machine. "Target that command ship," she ordered, pointing at a massive Veluxy vessel. "Take out their leadership, and the rest will fall apart." 3 human battleships focused their fire on the command vessel. For a moment, the alien ship's shields held. Then they collapsed, and the ship exploded in a ball of blue fire. Admiral Zixter watched in horror as his fleet was systematically torn apart. Everything he had believed about humans was wrong. They were not primitives. They were not helpless. They had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it, and now they were showing the galaxy exactly what they were capable of. "Retreat!" he screamed. "All ships, retreat to the hyperspace jump point." The surviving Council vessels began to pull back, but it was too late. Human ships pursued them relentlessly, destroying stragglers, blocking escape routes, turning the retreat into a slaughter. The battle lasted 11 hours. When it was over, the space around Earth was filled with the wreckage of what had once been the greatest fleet the galaxy had ever assembled. Of the 10,000 ships that had come to destroy humanity, fewer than 2,000 escaped. Nate Carson stood on the bridge of the Liberty, looking out at the debris field that stretched as far as the eye could see. His crew was exhausted but triumphant. They had done the impossible. "Get me a channel to Earth," he said quietly. "Tell General Cole. Tell her it's done. We won." In her bunker on Mars, Patricia Cole received the message. For a long moment, she simply sat in silence, tears streaming down her weathered face. 300 years of preparation, generations of sacrifice. And finally, humanity had proven that it could not be erased. She stood up slowly and turned to Captain Danny Webb. "Get me a channel to the Council homeworld. It's time they learned who they tried to destroy." The stars no longer seemed so distant. Humanity had earned its place among them, written in the fire of 10,000 burning ships. The survivors of the Council fleet fled through space like frightened animals. Their beautiful silver ships, once symbols of galactic dominance, were now scarred and broken. Many trailed smoke and debris. Some could barely maintain course. All of them carried the same desperate hope to reach the hyperspace jump point before the humans caught them. Admiral Zixter sat in the emergency command chair of a rescue shuttle. His flagship had been destroyed in the final hours of the battle, and he had barely escaped with his life. Around him, a handful of his senior officers stared at nothing, their eyes empty with shock. "How?" whispered his tactical officer. "How could this happen? They were supposed to be primitives. They were supposed to be easy." Zixter had no answer. Everything the Council believed about humans had been wrong. Their intelligence reports, their assessments, their confident predictions of easy victory. All of it had been lies. They told themselves because they were too afraid to consider the alternative. The jump point was only hours away now. Once they reached it, they could activate their hyperdrives and escape to Council space. They could warn the other species about what had happened. They could prepare for whatever came next. They never made it, Captain. Rick Palmer had been waiting in the outer solar system for 6 months. His squadron of 50 ships had been hiding among the frozen rocks beyond Neptune, running silent, conserving power, watching for exactly this moment. "There they are," said his sensor officer. "Approximately 1,800 enemy vessels, moving fast toward the jump point." Rick nodded slowly. "They're scared, running blind. They'd probably think they're safe. Should we let them go, sir? They're beaten. They can't hurt us anymore." Rick thought about the question carefully. He thought about the Council's message declaring humanity's extinction. He thought about the 10,000 ships that had come to kill every man, woman, and child on Earth. He thought about what the survivors would do if they escaped, how they would rebuild, how they would come back with an even larger fleet. "No witnesses," he said quietly. "Those are our orders. No witnesses." His squadron emerged from hiding and moved to block the jump point. The Council survivors saw them coming and tried to change course, but they were too slow, too damaged, too broken by everything they had already endured. The second battle was shorter than the first, but no less brutal. Rick's ships cut through the fleeing enemy with cold efficiency. There was no glory in it, no satisfaction. It was simply something that had to be done. When it was over, not a single Council vessel remained. On Mars, General Patricia Cole watched the final enemy signatures disappear from her display. The command center around her had erupted in celebration. Officers who had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment were hugging each other, crying, laughing with relief. Patricia allowed herself a small smile, but her eyes remained serious. "Get me a channel to the Council homeworld," she said. The connection took several minutes to establish. When it finally came through, Patricia found herself looking at the 7 species that ruled the Galactic Council. There was a Veluxy, tall and silver-skinned. A Crix, massive and covered in thick brown fur. A Delany, small and delicate with huge black eyes. And 4 others, each stranger than the last. They all looked terrified. "This is General Patricia Cole of the United Earth Defense Force," she said, her voice calm and steady. "Your invasion fleet has been destroyed. All 10,000 ships. We gave them more mercy than they planned to give us." The Veluxy representative leaned forward, his face twisted with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "This is impossible. You had no fleet. You had no weapons. Our intelligence confirmed." "Your intelligence was wrong," Patricia interrupted. "For 300 years, you watched us through telescopes and satellites. You saw what we wanted you to see. Primitive ships. Simple technology. A species barely capable of reaching its own moon." She stood up and walked closer to the camera. "But while you were watching, we were building. Hidden shipyards on Mars. Secret weapons factories in the asteroid belt. Research facilities buried deep beneath our oceans. Every time you rejected our request for membership, every time you called us dangerous and unworthy, we added another ship to our fleet. The Crick's representative growled low in his throat. You tricked us. We survived. Patricia's voice grew hard. You came to kill us. You came to wipe out every human in existence. And we defended ourselves. That is not a trick. That is what any species would do. What do you want? Asked the Delaney, her voice barely a whisper. What are your demands? Patricia was quiet for a long moment. The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. 300 years of rejection. Generations of preparation. A battle that had killed millions. And now, finally, humanity held all the power. I want you to understand something, Patricia said. We never wanted this war. We never wanted to destroy your fleet or kill your soldiers. All we ever wanted was the chance to prove ourselves. The chance to be part of something greater than our one small world. She turned to look at a screen showing Earth, blue and green and beautiful against the darkness of space. But you couldn't see past your fear. You saw our potential, and instead of welcoming it, you tried to destroy it. That was your choice, not ours. Back on the Liberty, Commander Nate Carson was overseeing the cleanup operations. Rescue teams were searching the debris field for survivors, though they weren't finding many. The battle had been too one-sided for that. Katie Morgan approached him with a tablet displaying the latest reports. We're getting messages from all over the solar system. Everyone wants to know what happens next. Nate took the tablet and scrolled through the messages. Governments asking for guidance. Military commanders requesting orders. Ordinary citizens demanding answers. The whole world was watching, waiting to see what humanity would do with its victory. What do you think happens next? Katie asked. Nate looked out the window at the stars. For 300 years, those stars had been forbidden to humanity. Now, nothing stood in their way. The Council fleet was gone. The hyperspace lanes were unguarded. The entire galaxy was suddenly, terrifyingly open. I think, he said slowly, that we have some decisions to make. Big decisions. The kind that will shape the next 300 years. He handed the tablet back to Katie and walked toward the bridge. There was still work to be done. There would always be work to be done. But for the first time in human history, that work would happen among the stars. The tide had turned, and nothing would ever be the same again. 6 months had passed since the battle that changed everything. The debris field around Earth was slowly being cleared, the wreckage of 10,000 alien ships collected and studied by eager human scientists. Across the solar system, hidden military bases had emerged from the shadows, no longer needing to pretend they didn't exist. And in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, a human ambassador was about to address the beings who had once tried to destroy his species. Ambassador Tyler Grant stood at the center of the hall, surrounded by representatives of the 7 council species. The room was enormous, built to impress visitors with the power and majesty of galactic civilization. Crystal columns stretched toward a ceiling so high it was lost in shadow. Holographic displays showed star systems and trade routes, spanning thousands of light years. Tyler felt very small standing there, but he kept his voice steady. We're not here for revenge, he said, his words echoing through the vast chamber. We're not here to conquer you. We never wanted that. The council representatives watched him with expressions that ranged from fear to suspicion to something that might have been hope. They had expected humanity to demand surrender. They had expected occupation, punishment, possibly extinction. This was not what they had prepared for. Tyler pulled up a holographic display showing human ships scattered across the solar system. But these were not warships. They were colony vessels, exploration craft, scientific stations. Ships designed not for war, but for discovery. All we ever wanted was what you denied us, Tyler continued. The right to explore, the right to trade, the right to grow, the right to be part of something bigger than our one small world. He let the words sink in before continuing. For 300 years, we asked politely. We sent diplomats and scientists. We signed your treaties and followed your rules. And you rejected us. Every single time. Not because we did anything wrong, but because you were afraid of what we might become. The Veluxy representative shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His people had led the push for humanity's destruction. Now his people were waiting to see what price they would pay. You were right to be afraid, Tyler said. Not because we're violent or cruel or dangerous, but because we don't give up, ever. You tried to contain us, and we found ways around your restrictions. You tried to destroy us, and we destroyed you instead. That's who we are. That's what makes us human. He took a deep breath. But we don't want to be your enemies. We never did. The war you started is over. The question is, what do we build together from here? On Earth, Commander Sophie Adams had traded her military uniform for civilian clothes. The war was over, and she had decided not to wait for the next one. There would always be soldiers, always be people ready to fight. But Sophie had spent enough of her life preparing for battle. She wanted to see what peace looked like. She sat in a small cafe in the rebuilt city of New York. The cafe had a perfect view of a park where children were playing, laughing, enjoying a sunny afternoon. 6 months ago, those children had nearly died in an alien bombardment. Now they were playing without a care in the world, the way children should. An old friend sat down across from her. Danny Webb had also retired from military service, though he still walked with the rigid posture of a career officer. He ordered coffee and watched the children play. Think they'll keep the peace? He asked. Sophie shrugged. Maybe they're scared of us now. That's not ideal, but it's something. And if they try again? Sophie smiled. Then they'll learn the same lesson twice. We spent 300 years preparing for a war we didn't want. We can spend 300 more if we have to. Danny nodded slowly. You know, I spent my whole life getting ready for that battle. Training, planning, preparing for the worst day in human history. He paused, watching a little girl chase her brother across the grass. Now that it's over, I'm not sure what to do with myself. Same, Sophie admitted. But I think that's okay. We'll figure it out. We always do. Above the cafe, a human ship crossed the sky, heading toward the stars. It was a passenger vessel, carrying ordinary people to humanity's first colonies beyond the solar system. The galaxy that had once been forbidden was now open, and humans were eager to explore every corner of it. On the Galactic Council's homeworld, Tyler Grant finished his speech with words that would be remembered for generations. We didn't want this war. We never did. But we were ready for it, because that's what humans do. We hope for the best and prepare for the worst. We extend our hand in friendship, but we never forget how to make a fist. He looked at each of the council representatives in turn. The Galactic Council wanted to know what humanity was capable of. Now, you know, we can destroy you if we choose. We have the ships, the weapons, the will. But that's not what we want. Tyler stepped forward, his voice softening. We want to trade with you. Learn from you. Share what we know. We want to explore the galaxy together, discover new worlds, build something that will last for millions of years. We want to be partners, not enemies. He extended his hand in the ancient human gesture of friendship. The choice is yours. You can keep fearing us, keep treating us as a threat to be contained or destroyed. Or you can accept us as equals and see what we can accomplish together. The hall was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the Delany representative rose from her seat. She was the smallest of the council species, delicate and seemingly fragile. But her eyes were bright with something that might have been hope. She crossed the floor and took Tyler's hand in her own. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "it is time for a new beginning." One by one, the other representatives followed. Even the Veluxy, though his hand trembled as he reached out. Within minutes, all 7 species had joined hands with humanity's ambassador, forming a circle at the center of the great hall dot. It was not trust. Not yet. Trust would take years, maybe generations, to build. But it was a start. Back on Earth, General Patricia Cole watched the ceremony through a live broadcast. She was very old now, her body worn out by a lifetime of service. But her eyes were clear as she watched humanity take its place among the stars. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Outside her window, the sun was setting over Mars. Human ships patrolled the solar system alongside former enemy vessels. Children who would never know the fear of alien invasion were being born on a dozen worlds. The future stretched out before humanity, vast and full of possibilities. The Galactic Council had announced war, and Earth had finally gotten what it wanted. Not through conquest, but through proving they could never be conquered. Not through fear, but through the promise of something better. The stars had always called to humanity. Now, at last, humanity was answering.